I think it's very clear that right now, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to be Prime Minister for all Canadians, has a choice to make. Either he stands up to fight for all Canadians alongside all premiers and the federal government that are doing that, or he chooses to stand with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary, and ultimately Donald Trump.
Trudeau would rather burn the entire house down to save face and have the last laugh at us, wouldn't he? And so Trudeau and his cabinet and his two potential successors, Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney, and most of the provincial premiers are really excited about having a new boogeyman to run against, an external threat that we can demonize, someone else to blame for the bad economy. Everyone is acting this way except for Alberta. Premier Danielle Smith has been going down to the U.S. again and again, not just demonstrating that she is way ahead of the game in terms of border security at the Alberta-Montana border, but to demonstrate to America that Canada is not hostile to America and America depends on Canadian oil. She's being friendly and constructive. As you may remember, and we interviewed her when she announced this, there are new drones and police patrols, real things on the Alberta border. She's doing the job that Justin Trudeau won't. But the rest of the country is practicing acting all butch. I mean, here's Melanie Joly talking about an energy embargo. Everything's on the table. I think that's code for she has no clue. But look at how tough she sounds.
Is your government prepared to cut off supplies of energy, for example, to the United States?
What I can tell you is everything is on the table.
So Melanie Joly is tougher on Donald Trump than she is on Hamas. Just think about that for a moment. I'm not just blaming liberals. Here's Doug Ford, the alleged conservative, sounding really tough, like he actually wants a battle.
We also need to learn more about where the government's retaliatory tariffs. I'm a strong believer in retaliatory tariffs. You can't let someone hit you over the head with a sledgehammer without hitting them back twice as hard, in my opinion. We're also eager to learn more about other considerations that we can hit back beyond the tariffs. And lastly, we need to hear from the federal government about how quickly and effectively the support comes to workers and businesses through the tariffs that we receive. It's absolutely critical we get it out to the people as quickly as possible. If we use every tool, Canada has a lot of leverage, as you were saying, Prime Minister, and again, we'll be dealing through strength, not weakness.
Doug Ford sounds like he wants a battle because he wants a battle. Did I tell you I had a Doug Ford door-knocking team at my house on the weekend? They're going to the polls on this. They want an election. They love the drama. So Doug Ford is not running against the Liberals. He's running to save Ontario and save all of Team Canada from the evil Donald Trump. Of course, he loves the fight. Now, 25% tariffs, you know what a tariff is. America would charge basically an import tax, and it would be paid by American customers. So the money doesn't go to Canada. The money is collected on the goods that go into Canada. So what are these Canadian exports? We have a huge trade with the United States, but what is it? Well, here it is. It's about $500 billion a year. Oil and gas, by far the number one export to the United States, $128 billion worth last year. Cars are a substantial second place, $58 billion, but not even half as much. Other machinery is $33 billion, and then commodities, plastics, metals, and then the rest are very small by comparison. So really, the exports are oil and gas. That's what America needs. And here's the crazy part. Alberta is very much at risk from this, as is Ontario. Trump has publicly said he would like to bring those automobile factories from Ontario and take him to Detroit and J.D. Vance's home state of Ohio. There's no electoral college votes in Ontario, is there?
But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their 20% of our car market. You know, they send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything. And we don't need any of it. So I said to him, well, why are we doing it? He said, I don't really know. He was unable to answer the question, but I can answer it. We're doing it because of habit, and we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors. But we can't do it forever, and it's a tremendous amount of money. And why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either.
And there's no reason other than inertia for Trump to allow the factories to continue in Windsor. But you can't do that with oil. You can't just up and move the oil sands to the United States like you can up and move a factory to the United States. The oil sands can't move. And there's such a large source of oil. The U.S. could not find an alternative to it in any meaningful way, certainly not within a number of years. And there are some U.S. refineries that are only connected to Canadian oil pipelines and only can handle Canadian grades of oil. Of course, that could change, but it would take years. And of course, the alternative, at least, again, for the next few years, if Trump ramps up U.S. production, which he probably will, the alternative to Canadian oil would be OPEC conflict oil or Russian conflict oil. So it's probably not going to happen that Trump's actually going to slap tariffs on oil. And by the way, there's smiling, friendly Danielle Smith down in Washington and down at Mar-a-Lago trying to make sure it doesn't happen. She's advocating for her province, but she's not threatening any other province. And of course, the, what's that? 11-digit sale of oil to America every year is a huge benefit for all of Canada. But the others are trying to throw Alberta under the bus. Suddenly, dirty oil sands oil is now Canadian energy that Melanie Joly and Justin Trudeau can use as a weapon. And suddenly, the only thing the other premiers can think of is, get this, putting a tariff on Canadian exporters ourselves, or just banning Canadian exports altogether, as in not fixing our border to stop drugs and migrants, which is what Trump asked for in the first place, not even fighting tariffs on U.S. goods coming into Canada, but shutting down the oil sands in Canada. Donald Trump has never threatened to do that. The worst he said is he'll put a tariff on them, which would be a terrible thing. But only our fellow Canadians are saying, let us shut down the oil sands. Trump has not threatened that. That threat has come from inside the house. Could you imagine if Danielle Smith had gone down to Washington and told Donald Trump, smash the auto industry in Windsor and other remaining Canadian car factory locations, or in some ways worse, was telling Doug Ford that Doug Ford had to unilaterally bear the brunt of this by shutting down his own auto industry to punish America. By the way, it would be just as illegal for Doug Ford to shut down the auto industry in Windsor as it would be to shut down the oil industry in Alberta. And in both cases, the companies are actually American. Do you think Ford isn't American? Do you think Imperial Oil isn't American? So it's all crazy talk. And remember, America can buy cars from other countries too, or from itself. That would actually get Trump's attention if we stopped the export of Canadian cars to punish America, because in some ways America would love it, build some factories there. But of course, Donald Trump would come to the aid of Ford, GM, etc. But the chutzpah, the gall, the outrageousness of everyone else in the country offering up Alberta's oil industry as a scapegoat.
Every single premier other than Danielle Smith then chose to put Canada first and say, but we're all part of Team Canada, because what happens to any part of us happens to all of us, and we will be there to respond strongly, to fight for Canada, and to do it in a united way that makes sure that it's fair across all industries, across all regions. That was what we came together yesterday to do.
A sacrifice zone. It's beyond the pale. For decades, it's always been Alberta's dirty oil that had to be stopped. Quebec didn't want that dirty oil traveling through a pipeline across its sacred land. Now, suddenly, that oil is national property, despite that the Constitution says it's a provincial jurisdiction. And that oil is needed as a sacrifice to save Ontario's auto industry and whatever other trinkets they sell to America by comparison. It's very frustrating to see this. Now, Stephen Harper recorded a podcast the other day, and he referred to this. He referred to the quirk of how we're selling oil to America because of Trudeau and his anti-oil friends, like his best friend, Gerald Butts, who used to run the World Wildlife Fund in Canada. Canada is stuck selling almost 100% of our oil to the United States because we didn't build pipelines to the open seas. We didn't build Energy East, which would have taken oil sands oil to New Brunswick to be refined there. The largest refinery in Canada is in New Brunswick, and then shipped, I don't know, to Europe or wherever. That was blocked by Trudeau, the Northern Gateway Pipeline, which would have taken oil to the West Coast. So we really have one buyer. I don't know if you've heard the word, that's called a monopsony. When there's one buyer and a bunch of sellers, it means you're going to have a lower than world market price. That's the opposite of a monopoly, where you have one seller and a bunch of buyers, where you pay more than world price. That is because Justin Trudeau blocked the pipelines, blocked the tankers, and he had the gall to tell Germany and Japan just a year or two ago that there's no business case to sell natural gas to them either. What a malicious idiot. Here's Harper talking about that.
Our country has an unparalleled comparative advantage in its resource base. And we have energy, critical minerals, resources of all kinds. We have probably the largest overall resource base of any country in the world, even greater than Russia in terms of its diversity. Well, at the same time, being a rule of law, stable jurisdiction, far removed from conflict zones. So this is a tremendous advantage of the country. Mr. Trudeau has denied that as an advantage and, in fact, gone out of his way to put impediments in front of the development of our resource industries, our mining, but especially energy. His goal has been to shut down the oil and gas industry. He's actually been quite plain about this. So Pierre's going to reverse those things. Canada will be back in the resources business in a big way, which is a great opportunity for us because, well, most Western countries have combinations of slow growth, debt, inflation, bad demographics. We have the easiest exit from that because we have this tremendous resource base that we can and products we can sell not only in the United States, but to growing emerging economies around the world. So that's the first thing. He's going to liberate that section of the economy. And the other thing he's going to do is start reversing the high tax agenda of Canada. It is true that Canada presently has a modest trade surplus with the United States. The reason, Gabe, we do is because you buy so much of our oil and gas. In fact, you buy it at a discount to world markets. It's actually Canada that subsidizes the United States in this regard. And, so maybe my response is maybe Canadians, if Mr. Trump feels this way, should be looking at selling their oil and gas to other people. We certainly have always wanted to do some of that. Maybe now's the time to do it. And
Pierre Poilievre said something similar the other day, that the real long-term answer to this threat by Donald Trump is to diversify where we sell our oil to. And so, God forbid, if Trump actually did put tariffs on Canadian oil, well, maybe we could sell it to India or South Korea or Japan or anyone. Here's Pierre Poilievre saying that same thing.
I think that the first thing that President Trump should do when he gets into the Oval Office is to send a big bouquet of flowers to the Liberal government in Ottawa. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants in Canada, the Liberals have forced Canadians to sell almost all of our energy to the United States, giving President Trump massive leverage in making these tariff threats. Had they allowed the Energy East and Northern Gateway pipelines to go ahead, had they rapidly approved LNG plants to sell the natural gas that Japan, Greece, Germany, and other countries were looking for us to sell them directly, we wouldn't have to give 100%, almost 100% of our hydrocarbons to the Americans at discount prices, and you wouldn't have had to ask me that question. Because I would have answered, in that scenario, I would have answered, we'll go around the Americans. We'll sell our energy directly. But that's something that the Liberals would not let us do. Freeland supported killing the Energy East pipeline, which would have moved 1 million barrels of Western oil to the St. John refinery and off to Europe, by the way, which would have helped defund Putin. Carney testified in the industry committee that he was against the Northern Gateway pipeline to take Canadian oil to Asia without going through the United States. By the way, while his company buys pipelines in the Middle East and in Brazil. How unpatriotic is that? So, frankly, the Liberals have got us in this mess by making us beholden to the Americans and giving the Americans our energy at massive price discounts, selling our oil for $15 typically below the market rate, and selling them natural gas for $4 per million metric British thermal units when they're going for $13 in Europe. That is economic sadomasochism, and I will put an end to it. When I'm Prime Minister, we will repeal the anti-energy law C-69. We will rapidly approve LNG plants and any other private sector unsubsidized investments to expand our ability to sell our energy without going through the Americans. And I will unite our people. We see right now that not only have the Liberals weakened our economy, now they're resorting to dividing our people. Divide and conquer. Right when the president is threatening us with tariffs, what is the first thing the Liberal Party of Freeland and Carney think to do? Divide Canadians. Divide our provinces. We don't need to be divided. We need to be united. All provinces, all Canadians. Let's put Canada first. Thank you.
But now we have a real split, don't we? We have the provinces who want Trump as a foil, a bogeyman, and who want, they would rather have a trade war in which they could play the hero and fight bravely against Trump rather than just fixing the border. That's what started this whole thing. Trump said, hey, can you fix the border? And they want Alberta to be the sacrifice zone. Danielle Smith has said that that will cause a unity crisis. Well, of course it will. Here's Trudeau throwing Alberta under the bus to fight for Canada, he says, except, of course, he won't fight for Alberta. Take a look.
I would actually like to point out to Danielle Smith that Canadians know the importance of standing up for each other. That's why Canadian taxpayers bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion, TMX, to be able to get Albertan oil to new markets. That was an investment that all Canadians made, that the Alberta government is making billions of dollars off of, because in what was a very difficult decision, the federal government, we made the decision to purchase and build and complete that pipeline. That's an example of all Canadians standing up for Alberta and getting it done. So yes, premiers should be advocating for their own industries, their own country, their own communities, but they should also put their country first, as every single premier except Danielle Smith did. Now, I could point to any number of those premiers and point out lots of moments in which they have points of disagreement with me, from Doug Ford to Scott Moe to Tim Houston to even David Eby and Wab Kinew and others. There's all sorts of disagreements we're going to have. But when push comes to shove, every single one of them are Canadians first. And yes, they're going to look out for their communities, but they also know that looking out for all of us is what everyone in their communities expect us to do. And on top of that, I think it's very clear that right now, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to be Prime Minister for all Canadians, has a choice to make. Either he stands up to fight for all Canadians alongside all premiers and the federal government that are doing that, or he chooses to stand with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary, and ultimately Donald Trump.
The chutzpah of killing the Trans Mountain Pipeline, that was a privately funded pipeline that Trudeau then killed, and then he bought it and overpaid by billions to get it bailed out. It was perhaps the stupidest decision made with taxpayers' money in the history of the country. Hey, Alberta, you should be grateful to Trudeau for building your pipeline with government money that he canceled when it was being done by a private company. You should be grateful. And because of that, you should let Trudeau shut down oil and gas. I mean, I tell you, I keep joking with my American friends when they talk about acquiring Canada. I said, guys, you probably wouldn't really want Canada as a 51st state. It would be like another California in the electoral college sense, going Democrat almost every time. I mean, good luck ever reelecting a Republican. Do they really want Quebec with its linguistic demands? I mean, get ready for bilingualism. Do they really want the demands of equalization from the poorer provinces? But would they want Alberta? Well, you bet they would. The most right-wing province, the province with 170 billion barrels of oil, third only to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. The province with lots of Americans living there now, the engine of equalization for the whole country. It's probably the most American of the provinces. You bet they would take Alberta. Do they really want Prince Edward Island? No, but I see the Premier of Prince Edward Island is happy to throw Alberta under the bus. I think Donald Trump was kidding about the 51st state. I think he saw it got under Justin Trudeau's skin, so he kept saying it. But the anti-Alberta strategy taken by Trudeau, Joly, Doug Ford, wouldn't that be something if it actually created a separation crisis? If it actually made the 51st state more likely, not the whole country, but just Alberta. Let me rephrase that, though. Danielle Smith isn't a force for disunity. They're calling her every name in the book, but she's not betraying the country by going to bat for her province at the expense of others. She's doing Trudeau's job because he's too busy going on left-wing talk shows like Stephen Colbert or MSNBC. Danielle Smith is doing what Trudeau won't do, what Melanie Joly is too stupid to do. She's trying to paper over this diplomatic hiccup. And if she succeeds, she saves Canada's biggest export, which happens to save her province, and maybe she'll succeed at more than that. She is the force to stop disunity, because if she fails, Alberta, if it's turned into a sacrifice zone by Trudeau and the other premiers especially, well, Alberta might just then decide to become the 51st state. You know, our Supreme Court of Canada ruled that it is legal to separate. In the United States, they had a whole civil war over it. It's not legal there. It's legal here. Do you doubt that if the province, one by one, the premiers of the provinces said they were going to shut down the oil patch, that would cause Albertans to say, we're out of here? Here's what Danielle Smith tweeted just a few hours ago. She said, how about this for building a Team Canada approach? Number one, stop threatening the livelihoods of tens of thousands of Albertans and Canadians via an energy export tax or ban. Two, immediately start construction on the Northern Gateway and Energy East pipelines to diversify our customer base to Europe, Asia, and our own country. Three, tell Germany, Japan, and the rest of the world that there is, in fact, a business case for Canadian oil and gas to be sold to them. Number four, repeal the unconstitutional and job-killing production cap, electricity regs, and C-69. That's an anti-tanker law, if I recall. 5, treat with respect and as an equal partner the Alberta taxpayers that have been transferring hundreds of billions to Quebec, the Maritimes, and even Ontario for decades. Let's start there on building our Team Canada approach, shall we? She's so right. And you know what? That's positive. That's a national approach, building the economy. Energy East, again, that's the pipeline that will go from Alberta to New Brunswick. Jobs all along the way, and it would fill the largest refinery in Canada, which right now takes OPEC oil. Can you believe it? It would build the economy. It would build solutions here. It would deal with Trump productively by fixing border issues, but make sure that Canada has other options. I like that plan. Everyone should, but Trudeau would rather burn the entire house down to save face and have the last laugh at us, wouldn't he? Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.